Are you a TE or extroverted thinking user like these types? Or are you a TI or introverted thinking user like these types? And honestly, what does this even mean? Like, I used to be so confused about what TE and TI actually were. And I feel like the more research that I did on YouTube, the more confused that I got. People said things like it's objective thinking versus subjective thinking, or it's logic over facts. And yeah, this is part of the story, but I think it left a lot to be desired. And it wasn't really until I read Jung's Psychological Types that this really started to click and make more sense for me. So, what are the ways that TE and TI are different, and how can you tell? Number one, TE is obsessed with fact, and TI is obsessed with narrative. Let me give an example to really highlight what I mean here. I used to have a boss, and he was the best boss I ever had, who happened to be an ENTJ. And the way that he worked was very interesting because he hardly had a personal opinion about the way things should be done. Like his main function, his main way of approaching things was data collection and data analysis. So, say he wanted to launch a new initiative, launch a new project, something like that. His first instinct would be to get something out in the real world as soon as possible, like some type of hypothesis, some type of data based on previous things that he's seen, get feedback, and then without his own personal opinion, analyze the data that he got back and see if it was a good decision or not. And if not, he would reformat it, try something else, get more data back, and keep doing that until the data told him that this was the right thing to be doing. In a weird way, it's as if the objective world were his guide. And it's funny, like whenever he would show his findings to other people on the team, there would be very little narrative. There would be very little argument about what the next step should be. It would be more like, I collected this data. This is how I analyzed the data. This is what I found from the data. Therefore, based on the data, this is the next thing to try. And that was it. There was no like narrative, there was no opinion, there was no trying to present an idea for this reason and this reason and this reason. No, it was just this is what we should do because this is what we're being told to do by the world. I'll counter that with an example of TI. So I used to have a business, and my business partner was an INTP. And at the beginning of the business, whenever we were launching a new product, we had to find a price point for the product. He suggested a price that was at or below the market average for similar products. And it was because he had the belief that the service that we were providing should be cheap and affordable. And he had good logical reasons for this. Like he had really good arguments about why he thought that. But he didn't look to the world for data to give him the opinion. He just thought about it. He looked at his own values, which, yes, they were logically deduced, but they were still his values. And then that gave him a frame. So whenever he did go out and look for data later, like doing research on competitors' pricing or things like that, he already had the goggles on of it can't be a high price because I am against that, right? Whereas a TE Dom, in this instance, like my boss in the other example, might have been impartial to what the price point actually was from the get-go. So I think that's the number one easiest to understand difference between TE and TI. But just for fun, I'll throw in some other ones that might help you distinguish this in either yourself or in other people. So here's another one. TE really cares about the answer, and TI really cares about the process. TE really cares about the answer because the answer is what you can take action on. And this is even true, like if you like debate with TE types versus TI types, like TE types, for example, will really ask you for facts and they'll really ask for your source. And if you can't provide those things, then it'll be really hard to talk to them about things. And that's what they'll look to when making an argument to you. It will be the fact itself. TI will listen to whatever claim that you make, but they'll more so probe you on why you think the things that you think, how you got there. And they want you to walk them through your process of getting to that answer, whether they agree with your answer or not. And if a TI user finds that your process makes sense, they might not agree with your conclusion, they might not agree with your frame, but they can see where you're coming from. But you don't necessarily have to agree on the base reality. But with TE, you do. Another insight I picked up on from reading Young is that TE is prospective and TI is more so retrospective. So TE is forward moving. It really cares about always being in motion. When you use TE, you're in the world, you're quickly collecting and analyzing information from the world, and then you're using that information to move forward in the world. It is a very forward moving function. If TE is a prospective forward moving function, TI is a retrospective function, meaning that you actually take a step back, meaning that your motion is backwards rather than forwards. Now, what does that even mean? When a heavy TI user gets an input, they will not charge towards the world in the same way that TE will, because that process is internal. So when they really need to understand something, they will remove themselves. They will take a step back from the world to analyze whatever inputs that they've got. Once they feel like they have a good understanding, a good frame, a good resolve for whatever input that they've gotten from the world, then they will step back into the world with their new frame and collect more data. But the active analysis for TI, because of that, is more of a backwards motion. It's more so taking a step back than charging forward as quickly as possible. One last thing that I'll add about both TE and TI types, specifically those that lead with TE and lead with TI. I want to quickly talk about the risks that they run into. So TI dominant people like ENTJs or ESTJs run the risk of losing their sense of self. So the more that they're in that TE forward charging function, the less of a sense of self that they have. And if they're in there for too long, they will almost like forget who they are, what they care about. There is a separation of the self, almost like a sacrifice of the self for reality, for the objective world, or as Jung calls it, the object. Heavy TI users, especially the INTP and the ISTP, really don't run the risk of this happening to them. What they really run the risk of doing is losing touch with reality because they're in their heads. They've taken that step back. They're analyzing their inputs from life so far, and they've come to some weird conclusions that make a lot of sense, but maybe are fundamentally untrue. But they're still there. Their sense of self is not gone. Their sense of self is not jeopardized. Their sense of reality, of groundedness, is gone. There's no basis or fact for what I'm about to say, but because of that, I think that TI DOMs, TI users are more likely to be really into conspiracy theories because a lot of conspiracy theories really make sense, even if the base claim is untrue or unproven. But let's be real, some conspiracy theories are probably true anyways. Guys, if you watched the video all the way through and you're here now, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to stay tuned because there's going to be a lot more videos like this. And also let me know in the comments any questions that you have, anything that you want to share. I'm more than happy to engage and maybe even take ideas about what videos you might want to see next. So thank you again. Bye.